Okay, so I made the mistake of going on Twitter and asking what kind of video people might want next, and they said a predictions one. So here we go. All the names, all the teams, and my thoughts on them. Everybody seems to have a thought, everyone and their dog. But how easy is it to predict it?
What do you think of the up-and-coming season, then? Who do you think will be the Drivers' Champion?
Okay, so maybe not my dog. What will happen in the paddock this year? Who will win in all the fights that we're wanting to see? And will any of the teams at the back manage to get off the back of the grid? It's lots of questions to answer. Anyway, here goes. Sadly, what can we say about Williams at the minute? I honestly can't see it being anything but another year of difficulty for them. If they were able to, I would say spend the time making sure the structure behind the scenes is in place and writing off this year again, because even if they throw everything at it, I can only see them just about catching up with the rest of the midfield, and that's taking their eye off the ball for 2021, which is where they need to be. But can they afford to do that? I don't know. I can't see it being anything other than pain for them, to be honest. With George Russell, what a year last year. Almost completely wiping the floor with Robert Kubica in every way, which, with Robert's injury, it's how effective was he. But still, looking at his results for where the car was, it was incredibly impressive. But he's now got to lead that team. So how well can he step up to that? Apparently his technical direction and work is very, very good. But is it good enough to take that team forward? There's only one way of finding out, I guess. Nicholas Latifi, not too much to say on him, unfortunately. In Formula 2, he was okay. Obviously, he has the super license points to be in F1, and sometimes different cars can affect different people in different ways, so he might be able to get more out of the Formula 1 package, and maybe he could some of the junior series that he raced in. Until he actually is on track and racing properly, there's not really any way of knowing or judging him, to be honest. We shall see. With Haas, this year could go one of two ways. Again, with Williams, I think personally they should just write it off, but can they, like Williams, afford to do so? Having the same tyres is either good news for them, because at least they have some data to build on, or really bad news for them, because they spent all last year trying to work out what the hell was going on with it and didn't really, at the end of the season, still have an answer. So they've got a lot, although they've got more data, they have a lot less data than the other teams have, who managed to just about sometimes get them to work. Another year of pain. Every team is going to throw resources at 21, and I'm going to harp on about this probably quite a lot, but they're the team that, in my opinion, would need to. Again, with Williams, that's where the focus has to be, but can they afford to do it? It's them for second from last for me. Unfortunately, it just kind of has to be. I don't see it being any better. On to Kevin Magnussen. What can we say? I don't think he's obviously able to show his full potential, but then that's true of everyone at that end of the grid, arguably. There's every reason to think that he can get high and good points if Haas can understand what's going on with their car and make it work. But will they be able to do that? I'm going to have him ahead of Roman just because he is more consistent. I mean, we say he was nothing special or whatever else, but he won Formula Renault World Series back in the days when that was a really decent series to be in and had some proper talent against it. He was good enough for McLaren to want him in their team. So, although I don't think he's necessarily able to show it at Haas, there's clearly talent there. And if he's given a car, I'm sure he can deliver. But will he get the car? Romain Grosjean. As a driver, just plays very hot and cold. Can have some absolutely cracking, amazing performances. He has the podiums and stuff he's got on merit. but he has the reputation he's got on merit as well. You don't know what you might get from him one race to another, and a lot of people have said, he shouldn't really be in Formula One, but if he delivered as he can deliver all the time, then he does, because he can be a very, very good driver. His technical feedback from the team, he was the one who said we need to go back, apparently that they needed to go back to the previous chassis so they can run them back to back to try and work out what was going on. Haas value his technical input. So he's there for a reason, but consistent performance isn't perhaps it. Moving on to Alfa Romeo. In some ways, for me, in the second half of the season, they were disappointment of the season, because 2018 they'd grown, they'd improved so much by the end of the year. Coming into 2019, they looked very strong. Kimi had some great performances at the start of the season, and then they basically tailed off into obscurity a little bit and became very much the third from last team, which, when you look at where they were the tail end of 19 and the tail end of 18 and the start of 19, that's crazy how much disappeared. So did they jump ship early onto this year, thinking they need to get in early because of getting in early for 2021? Why did it tail off the way it did? Did they switch focus early? That's all I've got, and for their sake, that's what I'm hoping. Again, I guess we'll just have to find out. The story of Kimi Räikkönen. Most of his time at Ferrari in recent years he was there or thereabouts, maybe. And then it gets confirmed he's changing teams to Alfa Romeo, and suddenly he wins his first race in years. And goes to Alfa and is very relaxed, and the first half of the season looked very good. And then, after the car didn't get so good, shall we say, he stopped looking as good. How much of that is down to obviously the car getting a lot worse? How much of that is down to Giovinazzi getting stronger? It's hard to say. But with talk of retirement on the horizon, what Kimi's going to show up this year? Will it be the complete fire starter race he wants to be in everything, or will it be just getting on and getting done and getting disappearing? This is a huge year for Antonio Giovinazzi. A lot of people, myself included, have given him a free pass on the start of last year, because after 2 years out, getting back into the swing of things is a very difficult job. When you're coming into it against a teammate as experienced as Kimi is as well, it's doubly hard. And then when he did finally get on top of things, the car development slid. So I don't think last year he was ever really able to show what he can do. But this year, especially with 5 Ferrari Academy drivers in F2 looking their way into Formula One, he really needs to step up his game and show what he can actually do. Because the excuses aren't there anymore. Now he has to actually perform. Toro Rosso, or AlphaTauri as they are from this year, strange one last year. It's like whenever there was any drop points, gains or things to be had, they always seemed to be the team that was there. And 2 podiums, you've got to go back to Sebastian Vettel the last time they had any kind of performance like that. But yeah, I don't think the car was one of the top challenges or whatever else. It was just the drivers being in the right place at the right time for the most part. But that's very almost Sergio Perez-esque. You can make a lot out of that and gain a lot from it. As for the drivers, well, it's fight on for their careers. Both of them have a world of things to prove, whether it's to Red Bull or to other teams, to see if they'll employ them, because they need to change the direction their careers have ended up in. Running in and out of the main team isn't healthy for either of them. They need to solidify their reputations and how people think about them, and it's going to be an interesting fight between them. Pierre Gasly. It's very much a golden generation French drivers at the moment. And Pierre on his day is as good as any of them. Give him a car that he can make work and he can manipulate to do what he wants, and he can be right up at the sharp end getting some amazing performances out of it. Give him a Red Bull that doesn't suit him and he's barely struggling to keep the midfield behind him, or dicing it out with them, not able to cut through them. There's question marks over his aggression last year, so whereas Albon, when he got in the car, was making the passes to put himself in position, Pierre wasn't, and that badly hurt him. So will we see a more aggressive Pierre this year when he's really got to dig deep to prove stuff? He recovered a lot last year at the tail end, his reputation, especially that podium, that was an amazing thing for him. But now he's got to take it forward. So will we see changes in the way he goes about it? But we'll find out. For Daniel Kvyat, see Gasly. Another guy who has obviously shown incredible talent. I mean, during the GP3 year he won that, he was just head and shoulders above everyone else, including Carlos Sainz that year. He is an amazing talent when his mind is focused and in the game. But too many times it's like you see if he's under pressure, it almost flicks a switch and he's prone to bad decisions. He can be an absolutely amazing driver, but it's which Daniel Kvyat are we going to get this year? The one who can get that podium and drive like his world's on fire and make amazing overtakes, or are we going to see Crashfest? I hope for the sake of his career that obviously it'll be the better moments we see, but he's another one who definitely has a lot to prove this year. Racing Point I find a tricky one to talk about. I can't see them doing as well as we might have thought for this year, because though they've got the new money and investment coming through and they're putting the steps in place or whatever, they're in the process of building a new factory. They've got the name change coming for 2021, and that's huge. So they want to be hitting 2021 as on top of it and challenging as much as they possibly can. I think 2020 is going to be a sacrificial lamb for them. I mean, unlike with Williams and Haas or whatever else, a few million from maybe losing a position or two in the constructors isn't going to change their long-term game plan. So I think they're possibly not going to be doing as well as people might expect this year. We'll see. On Sergio Perez, certainly someone whose career has sort of got away from him. Came into F1, one of the Ferrari young drivers, someone who has been highly looked at, has gone on to race with McLaren and then be that guy in the midfield who everyone's like, if he was in a top team, he could do something. Next year, I don't think it'll be his year, but I don't think he'll be competitive and at the front of the sharp end of the midfield somewhere. But it's the following few years that, when they've rebadged as Aston Martin, I think is where he's going to be looking to do something. So next year I think he'll be decent, but perhaps not where we were expecting him to be, because primarily with the team in the car. And we go into 2020 with the same question we always have regarding Lance Stroll. When will he actually manage to put qualifying together? If you look at his race results, overtakes, positions gained, general quality of his racing, he's a decent driver, but he's just starting so far back. And I think everybody has harped on about this since his first season in F1, and it's not his first or even his second season anymore. It's something he needs to address, but then it's not like the team are really going to drop him. So he's got more of a safety margin than perhaps some other people would. I'd like to see him get better, and I'd like to see him competing more at the sharp end of the midfield. When the Aston Martin name comes in, he should be getting results. But at the moment, he's very hit and miss. he can do nothing all year and then end up on a podium. That's just sort of how his results seem to be. But we'll see. He might surprise.
Intermission time now. I had this stroke of genius idea that to give a bit of variety and have some results that I could check at the end of the season that wouldn't be quite so predictable, I'd pick names out of a hat and put them down to see if any of them might be right. So just so anyone doesn't get any ideas that I might be like trying to sway it a bit by having a Ferrari hat or anything, there's a Silverstone hat. Other racetrack hats are available. So completely unbiased. Anyway, let's see what we get.
And I suspect this could all go horribly wrong, but it's worth a try. It's a bit of fun. Oh dear, I've just seen where some of these end up. And yeah, it's not going to be too successful, I don't think. But, you have to play around with these things. It will be fun to see how many do end up being right. So let's have a look at the results. I have my table together. K-Mag at the top. I know someone who follows F1 Fanatics will be happy with that. Haas at the top again. Look at Mercedes in 6th. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Anyway, better get back to work, I suppose. Up next we have Renault, and I'm expecting the fight between them and McLaren to be absolutely savage. It's McLaren's last year with Renault, so of course Renault are going to want to beat them in the last year to prove that they are better. But they're mainly and primarily going to be looking at 2021, because that's the chance that they and every team, I suspect, are going to feel as their best chance to shuffle themselves up the grid. They have the resources if they can just apply them properly to actually get a decent result, but I don't think they're going to really be threatening the top 3. So 4th at best again for them, I feel. I think Daniel Ricciardo will be wanting to prove that he is the front name at the head of the midfield, eyeing up a seat in one of the top 3 teams still if he can. But his performances this year, he has to impress, really. He has a new teammate coming in who's obviously fancied for ending up with Mercedes or somewhere in the future. And he won't want to lose the momentum to a French young driver and a French team, effectively. He basically still needs to prove that he's a guy who can carry a team forward. But he showed well at the end of last year and at times last year, and he was fighting well with McLaren to best of the rest on a regular basis, and he sunk Hulkenberg, so he's still got plenty of talent. And then it's on to Esteban Ocon. I've given Daniel Ricciardo basically the lead over him. I'm expecting him to, certainly very much at the start of the season, have the measure of him. And it's nothing to do with Esteban Ocon's talent exactly. It's more, as Antonio Giovinazzi found out, when you've spent time out of the race car for a while, it doesn't matter if you're doing simulators every week or whatever else, track time is important. And it's very easy to lose your edge a little bit. By halfway through the season, I'm fully expecting him to be back on the pace and pushing him. But the early season lead, I can't see him making up against someone as wily and experienced as Daniel Ricciardo. So while I'm expecting him to be fighting, for decent positions and stuff, I don't think he's going to be at the sharp end of the midfield, certainly at the early point of the year. McLaren are an interesting one. Certainly, in terms of support, there's a fresh attitude at the team, a belief in them that they're going in the right direction, and that conveys across so that more fans and stuff, I think, are being attracted to them. In terms of support, I think they're probably the fastest growing team on the grid currently. At the track, there's a lot of fresh excitement and belief there as well, and the driver lineup has certainly helped encourage and build that. It's all working and gelling very well together at the moment. That said, I think because it's their last year with Renault and the regs are changing next year, I think they're going to struggle to hold on to their 4th place. They should. I think they will do, but I think they'll find it harder this year. Carlos Sainz was absolutely my surprise for 2019. I always thought he was okay. He's picked up during his win in the Formula Renault World Series, and he came into Formula One looking reasonable. But I didn't think he had the kind of performance in his first season at McLaren, taking over as basically team leader and being able to be like head of the midfield. That level surprised me. I'm happy for him that he's been able to stamp himself on the season and the series like that. That's actually impressive. Going forward, we'll see how he does. Moving on to Lando Norris, his teammate, I've been following his career since 2016, and I think he probably has ultimately more potential than Carlos, but he's chasing in terms of experience and knowledge, and in terms of one-lap pace, he's on the mark, but it's getting the best out of the car over a race period, and some of the gap in points to his teammates, bad luck as much as anything else last year, and he certainly looked decent. He earned his place in F1 and in the team, I felt. This year, I think a step up in form again. Whether he'll necessarily beat Carlos, I don't know, but I'm expecting him to be a lot closer in the points. But we'll see. Kicking off the sharp end of the grid now with Red Bull Racing. What can you say about them, really? I think between them and Ferrari, it's almost certainly going to be very close again. Track dependent perhaps into what the strengths of the cars might necessarily be. I think Ferrari's driver lineup is probably slightly stronger, which is why I'd probably put them ahead in the constructors, but it's going to be very close, I think, between the pair of them. Alex Albon will get better and better as he gets more track time in that car, but it's all about Max if we're going to be realistic. I fully expect them to be getting wins and stuff this year. There's no reason why they wouldn't do. Moving on to the drivers, in Max Verstappen, Red Bull have arguably one of the biggest talents on the grid currently. Whether you like him or not, it's very difficult to argue with the results and the bullish Red Bull, but the way he's gone about it and the aggression and the drive to get the results, and he's a performer. Yeah, he still has his mistakes and his days when it all goes a bit wrong, but he's a driven person. He's always trying to get the best out of the material. Whether he's good or bad, he's never anonymous. He's always someone you talk about in the race. He never sort of disappears like some big drivers do on occasion. He's always present, doing something. He's looking at second or third this year, almost certainly, I suspect. Alex Albon's chances this year? He's got one job basically, and that's to run interference for Max and try and stop other people from causing him any issues. He'll be basically what Red Bull will be wanting him to be trying to mix it with the Ferraris and get in their way so that they're thinking about him and not chasing down the people ahead of them. And if he can be closer to the other 5 at the front and mixing it with them, then it'll be job done for him. They don't need him to do anything else, really. Yeah, and now we're coming up to Ferrari, my team, of course. It's going to sound very pessimistic. My big worry about them is that if they do and are in with a shout at the title this year, it's because they're throwing resources in arguably the wrong place and not thinking more long term. There's a danger they could be so desperate to win a title that they might see this year as their big chance and take their eye off the ball regarding the future, and then come 2021 be chasing again, which isn't real. I don't want another 2009 scenario, because I'm not convinced we've ever caught up from that. But we'll see. They might I might be pleasantly surprised. I hope so. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Matteo Binotto. I like him. The attitude in the team seems to have changed. There's a much more... It's less acidic, I feel. There's less of a blame culture in place they've been trying to put in. There's a lot of encouraging signs coming out of Maranello. It's just the results on the track aren't necessarily supportive of it. But we'll see. Ferrari fan, always live in hope. With Sebastian, I always think, to a certain extent, being careful what you wish for. Some dreams do not seem to come true. I could be pleasantly surprised. He could come back brimming with confidence. Ferrari could give him a car which completely works for him, and he could be in the title hunt. But the main thing that seems to have been lacking is consistency. If the opportunity for mistakes in the races has been present for a number of years now, and there are other things that don't serve him well either. Strategy calls don't always go his way. Mistakes happen on his part and Ferrari's part, which have cost potentially titles at times. Last year, he just seemed unsettled. The car didn't seem to suit him. He just wasn't a happy person in the team, it didn't feel. If Ferrari can give him a car that suits him, there's every reason to believe he could go on and challenge for a title potentially. But there's a lot of ifs in that. All we can do is wait and see which Seb kind of turns up this year. It'd be worth seeing if he does. On to Charles Leclerc. And what do I go about this one? Obviously, most people will know I'm a very big fan of Charles. I've been following him since 2015, actively supporting him since 2016. I think he's I hesitate to say revelation in Formula One, but he's definitely a huge talent coming into the sport. We're seeing a good generation coming through, in fairness. I'm looking forward to seeing him fighting and battling against Max in the coming years, maybe with the likes of George Russell and Lando Norris joining that fight in the future. Esteban Ocon possibly as well. There's a lot of very talented young drivers in the field. As for Charles, well, he's got he's got the talent. He himself said that basically, having someone like Seb beside him with development and things, he's still learning a lot all the time. So it's a good balanced lineup if they can work together. I expect Charles to beat Seb over a season, possibly, but Sebastian still very much has his place in that team, I feel. It's going to be very close between them, especially if Ferrari can give Seb a more balanced car to his liking. We'll just see how it goes. My money's on Charles over the course of the year, but it's going to be tight. I can't see him winning the title. I think second or third is most likely. Where do you even go starting talking about Mercedes? The just utter dominance has been fair play to them, basically. They've done everything right, nearly everything, but you can't argue with the results. Next year, basically, if they commit to next year and they run next year like they normally would a season, I can't see anyone beating them. The only way I can see anyone beating them is if they focus on 2021. And if they do, I think the sport, quite frankly, is probably screwed. But that's not their problem. They're there to win, and they've been doing that very successfully. So, as I said, fair play to them. They're going to be the team to beat. There's no way how much of an advantage they had last year if they made no changes to the car for this year and just concentrated on the engine, they would still be winning races. So I just can't see them getting beaten. And of course, the person who's benefited the most from this, in fairness, is because he's put hard work in. He hasn't just sat back and gone, I've got the best car, I can take it easy. He's pushed. Even when the Mercedes hasn't looked the best car, he's always looked like he could win the races and challenge for victories and stuff and put himself in that position. Lewis Hamilton. And he is the guy to beat at the moment for a reason. You don't get that string of... It's the same thing Michael Schumacher did, basically. You get the team and the equipment and everything in place that works for you to the way you like it, and you attack every race. You go for every result. You get the maximum from yourself and the equipment all the time, and that's how you get title runs like they've had. Always pushing, always completely going for best, and you end up in that situation where you get the records and you're breaking the records, and that is what being the best sportsman of your time in your chosen field means. By which I mean the level of success he's had is just staggering, and in terms of results, it's difficult to argue with that. I've clearly not done the driver orders in the order I expect them to finish in the title in here. If none of the other cars can challenge the Mercedes and Valtteri is the best hope of fighting Lewis for another title, I don't see him doing it. On his day, on an individual race, he can beat Lewis, but he doesn't have the consistency or the focus and drive to consistently do it over a season. And that's basically what's required. You need to be able to do that, and I don't think he just has that level of intense focus for a season in him at the moment. Anyway, that was my rundown of the teams and drivers and the what ifs and will sees and maybes that I'm expecting for the coming season. So my 2020 driver predictions we have on the screen at the moment. There's no real surprises there, to be honest with you. It's very much... This year's a season of evolution, not revolution, and all eyes are going to be towards the following year. So I don't really see any teams making any big jumps or making massive investments in their cars for this year, when it's all going to be going straight out the window again. It's going to be wasted money. So I can't see anyone beating Lewis. I think the fight for second is going to be exciting. Similar really with the constructors, it's pretty much as it was. Some of the teams may close up on other ones a little bit, but the focus is going to be on the following year. It just has to be. It's too important. They've limiting the cost and available finances and stuff. Everyone's throwing money at infrastructure this year, so building of wind tunnels, testing facilities, new factories in some cases, computer equipment. It's basically, if there's money that they can spend somewhere to help build the team up, that's where the money's being spent. I don't think it's necessarily going to be on the cars. Well, I could be wrong. Some team could make a brave effort at it, but that's my predictions for 2020 anyway. So yeah, guys, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you want to see any good content, then may I recommend F1 Fanatics, F1 Debate Show, F1 Strokey Reviews, Mark Priestley, Aldous, Jane Baird, Josh Rebel, The F1 Word, Late Breaking, Kids Love F1, Raz on F1, Aidan Millwood, and John T. Scorner.